Welcome to 4.0 to Pro, the pickleball podcast that focuses on a single shot, tip, or strategy to improve your pickleball game with every single pocket-sized episode. Our goal is to make you better on the court every time you hear our voices.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 4.0 to Pro, your pocket-sized pickleball podcast, where we teach you a single shot or strategy every single episode. I'm Michael O'Neill here in sunny Long Beach, California, joined by my good pal, Mircea Murariu, there in Boca Raton. How you doing, bud?
Great, pal. How are you?
Yeah, doing good, man. I was a little sore. I played a lobber the other day.
Ooh, I love lobbers.
I mean, but just over and over and over again. And one of them, I tweaked my left knee a little bit. So I was down for a couple of days. And I said, all right, just give it a minute. And then on Monday, I jumped into this advanced ladder and I played another lobber and I retweaked my knee again. I'm like, dang it, with the lobbers.
I usually enjoy playing lobbers. Fortunately, from my experience at playing tennis and actually even squash, I have developed a pretty decent overhead. So I usually enjoy playing against people that lob.
I mean, I have a good overhead. Let's not be silly. It's just when they do it 19 times a game, it's a thing. Anyway, first and foremost, folks, if you're looking for a pickleball paddle, carbonpickleball.com, CRBN. carbonpickleball.com. You get 10% off of your order by using the promo code 402P at checkout. And they have brand new bottles. They have these really cool new, it's almost like a giant mug. They're a big 40-ounce water bottle. And they have a big gigantic one if you want to drink like 19 gallons on the court or you've got a tournament day. And speaking of tournament days, you are off for the NPL finals there, sir.
I'm going to Cincinnati. Some of my teammates are already on their way today. So we're excited to play in the championship.
Well, maybe you can sweep the season, which would be very cool because you guys won the Boca Raton. Is it the Boca Raton Picklers? Is that the name?
Yep, it is. Yeah, we were fortunate enough to do well in the regular season, but it's really all about the championship. And all the teams will be at full strength for the most part with a few unfortunate injuries lately. But we're lucky to generally be healthy right now, and we're all excited to play. So let's go.
Well, I've not been called on to sub, so I will try not to take that too personally. Anyway, there is a great newsletter from our friends over at The Dink Pickleball, and that's thedinkpickleball.com. And I would say one of the more challenging things as you're advancing from 4.0 to Pro is being able to read a drop shot to advance to the non-volley zone. So we've served the ball, we've got a return, and let's say we're going to go for a drop versus a drive, and we're trying to advance to the non-volley zone. I am world famous for saying you kind of have to earn 2 points when you're on serve. The first point being just to get to the non-volley zone, which is sometimes much more difficult than you want it to be. And the second one is to actually win the point. But let's say your drop is a little bit high, you have to split step and you've got to get on defense in the middle of the transition zone. Well, that thing could take 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th. I mean, you could really be there battening down the hatches while you're under fire, just trying to earn your way to the non-volley zone.
And that's okay. I want to emphasize this point that you don't have to rush up there on a ball that is clearly attackable for your opponents. Many pro-level players, you will see, will have a lot of patience to get up to the non-volley zone. The key is to get up there on a quality shot that either you hit or your partner hits.
Well, sometimes it's hard for us to recognize what's a good ball. How do I know when to advance? And we've talked about on the show, red light, green light, where it's like, okay, we've got a decent drop. Let's move up a little bit. Oh, maybe it's not that good. Let's batten down the hatches and split step and get ready for the next ball. Okay. Then this one is great. So the tell, and this is what I loved about this particular email from the Dink this week. They identified one of the easiest to recognize tells for someone to go, okay, I can advance on this ball now. And that is your opponent dropping their head to track the ball. So now that you've got your drop, it's going over the net. It's so good of a drop that the opponent has to lower their head and look down at the court, which they don't normally have to do if the ball's a little bit higher. Well, that moment that they look down should tell you and I, Mircea, that we're good to go. Let's advance as quickly as we can. Now, that doesn't guarantee that we're going to get all the way up to the line, but it does mean that I can make a pretty fair advancement. And I would say this, if you move well, if you are someone who can still move really well, you're young or you've got great knees or whatever, this probably gets you to the line, or it gives you pretty close. It's not that big of a court. At the very least, you get into a much more advantageous position when that opponent drops their head on that drop.
Absolutely. Court positioning is one thing that I like to emphasize so much when I'm teaching or coaching, because when you're in a more advantageous position on the court, you get better balls, you get easier balls. So you look better. You generally get up in points better. It's absolutely critical that you get there as quickly as you can, at the same time maintaining that stability that we've mentioned multiple times before, by split stepping or stopping right before the opponent is about to hit the ball. They look down and the ball is bouncing, or it's very low that they have to look down. And, that's one of the keys to pickleball. You hit it low and someone has to hit up on the ball. As long as you can keep it down, you're getting yourself up in the point, or you're getting yourself a good pattern that you want to be able to attack.
Well, you just said something that wasn't in this particular newsletter, but I think is really, really valuable, which is if you've made the ball bounce on your third, that is a 100% green light, right? That forces them to look down at the ball, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the mistakes on the other side that people make is that they have a great drop, or their partner has a great drop, and they wait and admire the drop. They're like, wow, I've hit such a good drop. And, I've made this error a bunch, I'm admiring my drop. I'm hanging out and back at the baseline. And then I was like, oh, no, I should be up halfway, if not 70% of the way through the transition zone. We've all made that mistake. And one of the clues that you can use in addition to your opponents is your partner. That's what I like to do. If I am not getting the return, I'm keeping an eye on my partner. And if my partner is hitting a drop and I see them that they're advancing, I follow them in. Or if they are split stepping as soon as they hit their drop because it's so high, then I'm staying back. So that's the other cue that you can use, is if your partner is getting the third or the fifth or the seventh and they say, oh, go, then you go.
Yeah, it's interesting because when it's coming off of your paddle, you have a better feel if it's going to be good or bad. So what you're suggesting is to watch them, and they'll tell you instantly. Right now, I think the trending word is that everyone yells watch. If it's a little high, they'll go watch. And that means that you as the partner, you better watch out because the ball's a little higher than they meant it. It's got a little more velocity. It's probably more attackable. Batten down the hatches, get your split step ready, get into that volleyball set position that we love to talk about, and get ready to have the ball railed at you until you can earn your way back up with a better drop that might bounce there in the non-volley zone.
Yeah, we're back to the communication thing, which is so important. And I played with a guy this morning, and he uses no or yes. So when he says yes, then I know that I'm going to go up. And actually, he took this to the next level when he was playing with another person that kept attacking balls in the transition zone. In the middle of a point, he started yelling, reset, reset.
Right.
And we were laughing about it after the point. And he was just saying, well, it was his third try just attacking balls from the midcourt. So I just felt I needed to say something.
So now we've made it to the non-volley zone and we're all in a dinking rally. And to me, this is where a lot of your pro level expertise comes in. And that is being able to recognize some of the tells while you're in a dinking rally to know that next shot might be an opportunity for you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to focus on not really what your partner is doing, but we're assuming that they've already hit a good dink. I'm watching the opponents.
Right.
So the one obviously directly across from me, and then the one to the other side.
Well, I mean, there's only two, Murcha. There's only two over there.
Good point. Excellent point that we all want to remember. So
if you're playing four people, you're in a really tough situation.
Exactly. So then you're definitely going to get down in the point. So anyway, so what I'm looking for is when someone is either out of position, either side to side, or when they are out of position front and back, meaning that they are further away from the kitchen line or the non-volley zone line. The other thing I'm looking for is if my partner hits a really good dink, especially right in front of me, is my opponent turning their hips, or are they stepping over too far, or are they stretching, or are they turning their shoulders? Generally speaking, when you're dinking, ideally you want to keep the ball in front of you and you want to keep your hips and your shoulders straight ahead towards the net.
Like square to the net if possible.
Correct. And you want to keep them parallel. You don't want to have them be perpendicular. You or your partner have hit a really good dink that stresses the opponent where they have turned their hips or their shoulders, or they're out of position. Then that's a good time to attack.
Really early on in my pickleball career, I did a clinic with Jay DeVilliers, and he said if you show them your back, you're in trouble. Meaning like your back shoulder blade, if you've rotated so far, especially a backhand dink if you're on the left-hand side, if you've rotated so far that I'm doing it now, which is why I'm creeping away from the microphone, that you've shown them your right shoulder blade, then there's, first of all, a major Ernie opportunity there for the person directly across from them. They're seeing that your only bailouts are to try to get the ball back into the center of the court, or likely, if you don't even have that, you're going to pop a ball up that's quite Ernieable if they've got that skill set. That's something that I don't have yet, like from recognizing that and being able to take advantage of the Ernie. It always happens to me after the fact. I go, oh, I could have Ernied that one. That would have been a ball that I should have Ernied, but I don't do that as much as I probably could. But you're putting a lot of pressure on them with your dinks and making them turn their back to you, which should be a major indication that you can do something with that ball.
Absolutely. And one of the key things is putting yourself in that position to attack. If you or your partner have hit a really good dink, make sure you step as close to the non-volley zone line as you can in order to take advantage of that. Because again, what I often see is your partner or yourself have hit a great dink, and that person just kind of admires the dink and is 3, 4, 5 feet back, and they get a floating ball that they could have easily attacked. But now, because they're back from the kitchen line, they have to take it as a dink, or they start to attack and they attack too late and the ball is already below the net. And so they hit it into the net. The key thing is it's fine for people to step back and dink and get a more comfortable dink. If you're 3, 4, 5, even 6 feet or more behind the kitchen line, a pro that, especially a senior pro that does this really well, is Althoff Merchant. He'll be very far back, but once he gets a really good dink, he's going to be right up at the kitchen waiting to attack. If you feel more comfortable dinking a little further back from the kitchen, that's totally fine. But once you or your partner have hit a really good dink that puts pressure on the opponent, that's really when you want to step up to the line to be able to attack that next ball optimally.
Just to clarify, and this is something I've been doing a little bit lately, if I'm playing left side and someone's cross-court dinking with me and kind of goes to body, I have really 3 choices. I can move to my left and hit a forehand dink. I can move to my right and hit a backhand dink. Or I can back up a little bit and kind of hit the underhand basketball throw dink, which is quite comfortable. Stepping away a foot or two from the non-volley zone, making a very easy underhand kind of forehand-ish dink is pretty easy to do. And I do see a lot of pros doing that. You're getting the ball on the way down. It makes things very smooth and comfortable versus kind of a short hop backhand slice dink. Mm-hmm. Which I think I see a lot of 4-0 to 4-5-ish people do. They'll take a harder dink there because they're staying right on the line and just doing a little short hop. I like the idea of stepping back and giving it a second. And I also like the idea there where you've got some options. I can flick a lob if I want to from there to the back corner, blah, blah, blah. What you're saying is, as we do this, if I hit one that's particularly good, I've got a nice bit of topspin, I planted it into the corner, it's not good enough for an ATP, but it's really making that person scramble on the other side. I better get my buns up to the non-volley zone, maybe to the tee, have the right side player be nice and right on that line as well, and cut off all of the possible angles that that person could have to redeem themselves from this very bad situation I've just put them in.
I really want to emphasize this other point about attacking. So attacking doesn't necessarily mean hitting the ball hard. So if you get a particularly fluffy ball and your opponent is, say, 6 to 8 feet back from the kitchen line, what you can do is hit an aggressive roll volley at their feet. Because if you hit it harder, the ball will end up in their torso level, so at their chest or waist, and might be easier for them to hit a ball. Even if you hit a quote aggressive dink, unquote, that's also another way you can attack. And the other thing is, when you are quote attacking, you want to also be ready for the next ball. So you're never attacking to hit a winner, or almost never. So never say never, but you're not attacking to hit a winner. You're attacking to set up the next ball for yourself or your partner. Because I see this mistake very commonly, is that someone will hit a great shot and then the opponent has a great reset or a great counter, and person that attacked is not ready for the next one, or their partner is not ready.
This is a really weird and challenging thing to teach to an early 4.0 player. This skill in and of itself of being able to recognize an advanceable ball is difficult because there's so much nuance and there's so much reading it. So I really love this head down idea. There was a clip a bunch of years ago, probably 3 years ago, where Riley Newman was playing with Matt Wright. They were a doubles team for a really long time. And there was this sequence that, man, they probably had to go to maybe the 19th shot to make their way to the non-volley zone. It was this really long 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and they're just defense. You know how great Riley is at defense.
Amazing.
And they're waiting. And finally, they probably didn't make it halfway to the transition zone. They were in the middle of it. And finally, one of them hit a very good drop that was going to bounce or be really low. And man, you could see both of them recognize it right when it came off the paddle. And they just collapsed on it. They collapsed on the ball. They both followed right where the ball was going and cut off every single angle that the other team had. That next ball was predictably high and it got put away instantly. But it was like this perfect illustration of A, the patience level of a pro, and B, this red light, green light concept where it's not there yet, it's not there yet, it's not there, it's not, oh, there it is. Bam. And then the second that they recognized that it was good, they just collapsed on it and the point was over. It was very cool.
Yeah. And you use the word recognize, which is really important. And one of the ways to illustrate this concept, back to what you mentioned before, you said that you haven't been quite comfortable with the skill of going for an Ernie because you often recognize that, oh, I should have Ernied that.
Yeah, recognize it too late.
Right. But you recognized it, which is the important thing. And then it doesn't mean you necessarily have to Ernie, but you recognize that that wasn't a ball that you could potentially Ernie.
Yeah.
So if you pay attention, you will see more and more balls that you can potentially Ernie. And then you translate that into actually trying to do it when you recognize that your partner has pulled someone out right in front of you, either a little bit out wide that's not enough for an ATP, and the person has looked down at the ball, they've turned their shoulder, and what they're going to try to do is try to take that dink straight ahead to you, and you are able to be in a position to Ernie and then put the ball away.
A couple of shows ago, I mentioned that there was a guy we were playing against that just had these vicious cornhole drops to the left side. They were so good for this first game. And it wasn't until after we recorded the show that I thought, I probably could have Ernied half of those. I didn't even think about it at the time. But they were in a position, I think about it now and go, oh yeah, I probably could have got a bit of a running start and hit a forehand there and it would have been great. Let's talk about caveats to this, meaning that maybe we're over aggressive or, you tell me what some of the caveats of this are and when this could go haywire.
The main caveat that I'm going to discuss is really as you're going through the transition zone, because I think that's where we started this in terms of you get a good drop or your partner hits a good drop and then your opponent or one of the opponents has their head down. When you're advancing, you want to advance as quickly as possible. But the biggest thing is that when they are right about to hit the ball, that you do that split step, or even if you don't, maintain that wide base and that stability so you're able to make the decisions. Because if you are running through as quickly as you can and they are hitting the ball, you have really a difficult time making the multiple decisions that you need to hit the ball. And the decisions are whether or not the ball is going in or out, whether or not you're going to take the ball in the air or off the bounce, whether or not you need to attack the ball or reset. Those are all those decisions that you have to make as you're going through the transition zone. And if you're not stable and stopped and set, you're not going to be able to make a good decision. That's really the biggest caveat that I want to address.
It's almost like don't run through the yellow light. Make sure that if the ball's good, you go as far as you can until you can't anymore. And when you can't is when your opponent's about to hit the ball. So you better get that split step, get that stable base, and get ready for the next ball. A lot of this happens sometimes as well when both partners don't recognize it at the same time and one's lagging back or something along those lines. Meaning they're giving opportunity to the teammates on the other side because the 4 people on the other side, because they've left too much space now. There's like a huge chunk of angle space in that transition zone that they can potentially go to that might put you guys in a bit of harm's way. So if I make another t-shirt, it's going to be split step, stable base, and communication. Those are the three things that I think matter probably the most in this pickleball game of ours. And if you're not communicating and moving well with your partner, which happens a ton in rec play at the lower levels, you guys are just disjointed on that. I love your idea of one of the people, the alpha, the better player, saying once it happens once or twice, being able to help your player along. And you could even ask them, is it okay if while we're advancing, if I say the word go, that we go together? Is that okay? Because a lot of people don't want to be coached. They just want to go run around and play pickleball. It's a lesson I never learned because I feel like I want to coach everybody. But I love the idea of saying go and stop and maybe reset sometimes as well.
One of the other tells is you have a situation where you know that your opponents have to unwind the stack. So you have one person on the left that you know is going to have to cross over to the right side, and they are returning from the left side. So you and I know that it's going to be a little bit of an open space on the right side. So we'll say, okay, let's drop or drive to the person that's moving over and switching. And so we have that little bit of an opening. And so especially if we get a short return and it goes to you and you're on the left, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go up and put some pressure on.
Right.
By moving up closer to into the transition zone to put some pressure. One of the exceptions to kind of the stability and stopping is really poaching. So when someone is poaching, obviously but that's another thing that you can predict. Let's go back to the scenario that we were discussing. We have people unwinding the stack. If someone returns to me and I'm on the right and I have a cross-court return to the person that's unwinding the stack, you are able to put some pressure on them by going up, especially if it's a short return. And then if you're poaching, you're able to poach to the middle.
We do these shows and we talk about these subjects, and often I find myself on a rec court and I get to experiment with a lot of the stuff we talk about because, well, first of all, it's more fun. But I played in a ladder on Monday, and our final game was against two players I've been playing with for 4 years. So I knew them very well. And one of the guys has a pretty wicked backhand slice drop. And this has nothing to do with what we were just talking about, but I just thought I would talk strategy with you for a second. But the other guy is a menace. It was an absolute, he's about 6'1", super athletic, all over the court, poaches all the time, everywhere. So it's very difficult to steer around him. Well, dude, I will tell you that he did not see a single opportunity in that game. We returned to him every single time. And as they were trying to make their way up the non-volley zone, we just kept going, Tim. Jeff didn't see a ball the entire time. And we, again, beat them somewhat handily. And it was a situation where I got a chance to chat with Tim after. And I said, you didn't see a single opportunity to run around the court and be the menace you usually are. And he goes, oh my God, I didn't even notice. So sometimes they don't even notice what you're doing. But we played an entire game where we returned only to one guy and they didn't identify it. Part of the strategy of getting into this, I would say 4 or 5 plus pickleball game is starting to recognize what they're doing against you and then trying to figure out how to counter it. But that's probably another whole episode.
Yep, I definitely think that's another episode. But again, you're back to recognition. If you just try to focus on your opponents as you're dinking for certain rec games, just try to focus on their hips, their shoulders, their feet. It's just going to help you tremendously in terms of being able to anticipate where the ball is going to go or which balls are going to be able to be attacked or not attacked.
And my final thought of the day is go watch a rec game and then go to YouTube and watch a pro game and watch how much more flowy and patient the pro game is versus the spazziness of a rec game where people are taking shots they're not supposed to and they're in the wrong spot and they're speeding up balls. And it's all this stuff where the pro game has got this lovely rhythm to it until it doesn't. And then it gets hardcore for a second. Anyway, Mircea, good luck to you this weekend. I hope you guys win the championship. And,
thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Wearing the gold. Folks, you've now just listened to another episode of 4.0 to Pro. Thank you, as always, for listening to the show, supporting us, and playing pickleball. And we will see you next time.
And I think I'd like to give you a shout out for introducing some new nomenclature, the flowiness and the spazziness. So I haven't heard those before, so I appreciate that. Thank you for your contribution to pickleball.
Next level, baby. Next level.
Let's go, baby.
Thank you for listening to 4.0 to Pro. For more tips, find us on Instagram at 4.0 to Pro. If you have a pickleball question, submit it at picklehelp.com. Now, get out there and dominate. But don't forget to have fun.